Should we do a Christmas special? I actually think as a genre, there's not that many Christmas specials in science fiction. I mean, we all remember the crap show, which was the holiday special of Star Wars. And Star Trek just completely shies away from Christmas. I mean, quite rightly so. I mean, it is a very humanist programme. Gerry Anderson, though, on the other hand, seemed to really enjoy making Christmas stuff. And fortunately for me, you guys seem to really enjoy it when I talk about Gerry Anderson stuff. Give or Take a Million is the final episode of Thunderbirds. It's about a few billionaires that get together and decide they're going to help some children out at Christmas time. And their grand scheme is, in order to raise money to build a new wing of a children's hospital, they're going to fill a rocket up with toys, they're going to shoot that rocket at the hospital, every child is going to get a present, and one of those children is going to be lucky enough to get to go and visit Tracy Island. But in true Thunderbird style, things go a bit wrong because a couple of thieves are going to break into the toy shop, they're going to cut a hole in the wall, and they're going to get into the vault of the Second National Bank next door. That's right, the Thunderbirds Christmas special is a heist movie. A lot of the tropes that are developed throughout the series, they sort of distill into this one episode. For instance, just like the episode Moving You're Dead, it's all told in flashback. In actual fact, those sort of famous scenes in Thunderbirds where they'll cut to a real life actor's hand doing the movements, there's more of that in this episode than you'll see in any other episode of Thunderbirds. So the story starts out on Tracy Island, and Jeff is talking to the child that has won this fantastic opportunity to go and visit the Tracy brothers on Christmas Day. And he's explaining to him just all of the cogs in the machine that had to work together to make it happen, and the things that could have stopped it happening. That's where the flashback element comes in. We get some really, really good characterisation in this scene as well, because these billionaires, they are cynical as they come. Because yes, to the child watching it, this is a very altruistic act. They're going to give children toys at Christmas time, sick children in a hospital. But one of them is very, very quick to point out that this toy shop is going to get loads of free advertising from this at its busiest time of year as well. As the first half of the story sort of moves on, we're sort of taken through the planning process of this. It's sort of a bit fillerish actually, but it's great to see other characters apart from the Tracy boys actually. We're introduced to some doctors at the hospital and they're explaining just what they want to do. They're trying to raise money as well. They need to raise millions of dollars to build a new wing of the hospital. And then it's Christmas Eve and it's chucking out time at the toy shop. And a couple of gentlemen dressed as Father Christmas, they're finishing up work for the day, wiping their brow and they're saying, oh wow, it was really busy this year, wasn't it? I wonder why that could have been. When two gunmen jump out on them. They tie them up and they gag them. They almost twiddle their moustaches, they're so villainous. And their scheme is a simple one, but it's a devious one. Because right next door to the toy shop is the Second National Bank, and it's got, give or take $1 million, about $10 million in it, all in gold bullion. One of the things Thunderbirds does really well, and we must remember, however much we may enjoy it as adults, it is a kids program. But what it done amazingly well was it showed the mechanisms of what was happening in these really tight close-ups. You'd always see the gadget or gizmo that International Rescue was using, or how the accident or whatever was going to happen in a very tight close-up, and you'd see it happening a mile off, and the music would like raise the tension up as well. And as a kid, you had a really sort of deep understanding of what was going on the screen because of this. And no matter what piece of tech, it was always designed in a way that as a child you would understand. Don't get me wrong, looking at it as an adult, you're just like, oh Jesus Christ, come on. But these bank robbers, they drill into the vault, but they can't touch the floor of the vault. So they use a suction cup, a rocket launcher, and some rope, and a pulley mechanism. And they start winching themselves across the vault to get to the bullion. Again, for these sort of one-shot characters, you get a really good bit of characterisation as well here, because as they're being winched into the vault, one of them passes this big bundle of cash, and he goes to grab it, and his mate has to remind him, like, hey, no, come on, that's small fry, don't go for the cash, go for the gold bullion. While this is happening, we're getting like the kind of subplot going on Tracy Island. This is how the Tracy brothers prepare for Christmas in their most typically boring Tracy brothers fashion, because the Tracy brothers are well boring when they're not saving people's lives. We're seeing the preparations for the rocket launch. The Tracy family are watching it on television. They're all getting together. Lady Penelope's there, Grandma's there, Kirano, Tintin. The whole ensemble is on Tracy Island, with the possible exception of Parker, because you don't actually see him on screen. And I think that's probably one of the 2 times that you actually see Lady Penelope without Parker. And while this is all going on, all these preparations for Christmas with Tintin and Scott flying off to buy what looks like millions of pounds worth of presents, Brains is up to something. We don't know what. He's off on one of his mysterious moments. You know, every now and again, Brains did that start acting a bit weird and mysterious and a bit cagey when he was up to some sort of scheme. Well, he's up to something, and we don't get to see it until the end of the episode. In actual fact, Tintin and Virgil catch him. He's up to something, he's on the roof, he's doing something, and they can't quite work out. They think they've got an intruder somehow on their island, thousands of miles from anybody. But again, brilliant direction, actually. I think it's Des Saunders who directed this one, because when he emerges into the house, he's completely silhouetted. And as a kid watching it, that's sort of a bit subliminal, that is, because he's acting shady and he's completely in shade. Virgil then takes off in Thunderbird 2 because he's got to go to the hospital to pick the lucky child up who's going to spend their Christmas with the Tracy brothers. Back at the toy shop, things are getting a little bit tense though, because the robbers are being greedy. They're trying to carry too much gold out of the vault, and their little suction cup device slips. And this is brilliant. This is typical Thunderbirds. They was great at raising tension. And they get you. You actually start rooting for these villains, because as that rope sort of drops, you're like, oh no, they're going to get caught. You're rooting for these guys. The heist goes off without a hitch until the last moment, because as he's being winched out with that last load of gold, he sort of knocks a shelf, and on that shelf, a pencil rolls off and drops to the floor and sets off every alarm in the city by the sounds of it. All hell is let loose. The robbers ain't got nowhere to flee to. They're cornered, they've got nowhere else to go but up. And what is up? Well, it's the launch pad on top of the toy shop for the rocket. They flee to the roof and manage to get into the container full of toys just before the launch. They make their getaway in the rocket. But unfortunately for them two, the G-forces knock them out. There seems to be quite a lengthy flight time between launch to landing at the hospital. And in that time, the president of the Second National Bank offers a reward, a certain percentage of the money that was stolen, if it were to be recovered, that is. And unfortunately for these two rogues, people know that they're in that rocket, and they're able to telephone ahead and warn the hospital. And we get this scene, which is probably one of the most unnecessary scenes of tension ever in a Thunderbirds episode. But one of the characters just doesn't even bother communicating this to the doctor and the nurse as they're about to open up this hatch on the rocket. He basically holds them at gunpoint and says, get away from it. And for a second, you're thinking, oh my goodness, is this man in cahoots? The two villains are apprehended, and the reward money goes to the hospital. So problem solved. The hospital's raised their money to build their new wing. The billionaires have got their free advertising, and a young man gets to go to Tracy Island. Just at the last moment, Brains unveils his scheme. He makes it snow on Tracy Island. Now, I'm going to admit, I really mugged this episode off for a lot of years. I just sort of thought nothing of it. And it was because, well, like every other kid, by this point in Thunderbirds, I was bored with it. But as an adult watching it, you know what? There's a lot going on with this episode. Probably a lot more subtext going on than almost any other episode of Thunderbirds, actually. I mean, for starters, I always say Thunderbirds is a children's programme, yes, but it's a children's programme which was deliberately designed so that the adults in the room could enjoy it as well. But this episode is very subtly different to that. It's probably the most out-and-out children's episode of this they actually made. And you can sort of see that with the characters they've got in it, these sort of one-shot characters. I mean, you see that with the billionaires, they're given a little bit of depth. But the two bank robbers, they are utterly irredeemable. That never really used to happen in Thunderbirds. The villainous characters in it always had some sort of redeeming feature. They always had a lot of depth. They always had a sort of motive about them that you could kind of almost get behind, providing the villain of the episode was an actual character rather than some sort of natural disaster or something. Also, I think the whole message of it as well, the message of this episode is completely Christmas. I mean, Christmas is all about charity, it is about kindness. And who is more needy at Christmas time than sick children? I was really sort of brave with the kind of storytelling in this episode as well, because it would have been just so easy to make this episode basically, well, some sort of Elon Musk type character has shot a missile full of toys at a children's hospital and it's all gone wrong at Christmas time. And the only people in the world that can fix it are those brave Tracy brothers. And they would have like given Alan some sort of character moment earlier on in the episode where he was sort of bemoaning working on Christmas Day or something, when later on in the episode he was the character that had to board this rocket and fix the problem, get injured and then come around in a hospital when he was surrounded by children or something like that. You know, lesson learned. You know, don't want to help children at Christmas time. Well, here's what it feels like to be one. But no, they don't do that. This episode could have happened without the intervention of International Rescue. They do nothing in it, literally nothing, apart from pick the kid up in the end. And that's a really great message, because it tells children at Christmas time, hey, you know what? These heroes of yours, they are heroes, yeah, but the real heroes, the real life heroes, are those sick children laying there in hospital away from their families at Christmas, and the people that take care of them in those places. All those doctors and nurses. Those are your real heroes. As well, I sort of think it sort of kind of explores Christmas on a philosophical level. When you take away the religious elements of Christmas, what is Christmas about? Yeah, it's about charity. Yeah, it's about giving. It's about family. It's about those who are less fortunate than yourself. But also from the earliest of times, even back in the Roman times, I mean, before Christmas even was a thing, it was Saturnalia, was the mid-year festival in Rome. It was the festival of children. Christmas, if you like it or not, is all about children. That's why I reckon this episode went the way it did. As far as Christmas specials go, I think it's great. It's got all of those messages that you want from a Christmas episode of something. But it also showed that right up to the bitter end, Thunderbirds was still absolutely quality. From Trapped in the Sky to Give or Take a Million, Thunderbirds was absolutely amazing. The amount of tension they can create just from watching a rope fray is just absolutely incredible. I've never seen television like that outside of Thunderbirds. The way that you are drawn in as well with these marionettes, these are made out of like plastic and wood. They're utterly lifeless, but they seem to sort of magically come alive on screen, and they draw you into that. Even as an adult, you forget what you're watching. You forget you're watching puppets. That's a real art form, and everybody that worked on Thunderbirds are all geniuses, and everything they had learned throughout the entire run of Thunderbirds is present here in abundance. But it was very sad that Thunderbirds ended here, because it could have just gone on to so much more great stuff. You know, this episode didn't actually get a national broadcast in the UK until 1992. It was broadcast locally, sporadically throughout the years, but it wasn't broadcast as a whole to the entire nation for nearly 30 years. And Thunderbirds in the UK, for better or for worse, whether we like to admit it or not, is bound up with Christmas time. Millions of children in 1966, in 1992, in the year 2000, were just praying to Father Christmas that they got Tracy Island, that they got Thunderbird 2 or Fab 1. In actual fact, there's a scene in this episode where the little kid, Nikki, he's talking to Jeff Tracy and he's got some toys in front of him of all the Thunderbird machines. Those are real life Thunderbird toys that you could buy. And famously as well, in the UK, we've got this children's television programme. It's the longest running children's television programme in the world. It's called Blue Peter. And one of the presenters, Saint Anthea Turner, one year, when it was looking like there was going to be loads of kids that weren't going to get Tracy Island, famously made a Tracy Island out of a load of old crap she had lying about, like washing up liquid bottles and empty tubs of butter and all that kind of stuff, and paper mache and things. When they do lists of brilliant Christmas moments, I think Apollo 8 going round the moon is at number 1, but number 2 in the UK is Anthea Turner making Tracy Island. And yes, unfortunately, I was one of those children that didn't get a Tracy Island that year, and I have never forgiven my mother for it. And it was only a few years ago actually that Mrs. Sci-fi pulled it out of the bag and got me my Tracy Island finally. Thanks for watching. If you like my video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think, tell me what your Thunderbirds Christmas memories are, and a very Merry Christmas from the Decline and Fall of British Sci-Fi.